Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is James, and I'm speaking to you from a sort of sunny Reading, and I will be guiding us through the next couple of hours. First up, welcome to so many of you from around the country who have committed to taking some time out to engage and reflect on this subject, but more importantly, coming together to learn about how we can drive and encourage transformation and change that we all want to be part of, which is why we're here. You'll see on the screen how many sort of organisations and groups we've got attending today, and to have nearly 600 of us is huge. And I'd like to give a shout out to all of you. I can see colleagues from academia, charities large and small, individual advocates of lived experience, NHS providers, local authorities, housing providers, colleagues from the debt and finance advisory sector, football and rugby and sport partners, the railway organisations, police, religious groups, social media channels, schools and education. It is a fantastic thanks to everyone for making the effort. With the interest that we've had, with the interest that we've had, we as of a team have had to work hard and fast to get the right infrastructure in place from a digital perspective. We haven't done this via Teams before, so we may experience a couple of gremlins along the way, so do bear with us, and it will be on me. But what I do hope will shine through is the passion and the potential of who's going to be talking and who is in the room. We've got Sam, Tyra and Nick who are working behind the scenes. We are on a tight schedule, so Q&As may not be possible, but our presenters will have the chance to respond in the chat. Please do commentate, reflect, and also post links in the chat too that we can point to. If you do have any inspiration or reflections, please use the hashtag capital mental health to start those conversations. So why are we together? So we've convened this group because whilst the past year has been a very stressful, challenging and an uncertain one for all of us, we've also seen a glimpse of a future where people's lived experience is respected, people feel empowered enough to share their challenges, and others are ready to recognise, listen and design supportive communities with and around those people. But what are things like now? And what might a collaborative social movement focused on cooperation and dissolving boundaries, releasing the potential, might look like? This diagram, those that know me might sort of see this as being a little bit cluttered, but what I'm trying to highlight here is how the NHS in this case distills its priorities from government. We are grateful to those policy leads who ask to focus on not just health, as we're all aware that the impact of the social determinants of our life play so much more of a role on our mental health and emotional well-being. But alongside this, we have a multitude of priorities across the NHS which all intersect with each other and our wider partners. Areas such as social prescribing, suicide prevention programmes, the issues around health inequalities, substance misuse, and how services are redesigned for those with a serious mental illness. But too often, and this is a challenge to myself as well, our anchor organisation approaches only really sort of scratch the top level of men, in inverted commas, with services and approaches offering a very broad brush of support. And when we do scratch the surface of blokes and commit to understanding the life experiences, motivations and challenges we face, then we can truly engage, learn and support these populations. We've got to recognise that, you know, life is fragile, it's complex, and a set of interconnected life challenges and past experiences as set out in the bottom here of the diagram. So how do we support this completely? And I think getting to the how and unlocking the possibilities is why we're here today. So we can all recognise our own roles in dissolving the boundaries, reducing silo working and opening ourselves up to collaboration. This isn't the first time that a coming together like this has happened or has been attempted, and we certainly won't be the last. but I do hope this is a first step on a journey that we're all taking together. So, what are some of the principles we need to consider when working to unlock the assets and communities that are out there for men? I'm delighted to welcome Joe Potter from the Samaritans, who recently launched their report on engaging men earlier, to talk through some of the findings. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks so much, James. I'm just going to share my screen.
Joe, we may just need a little bit more volume from you as well, just on the mic. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Is that better? Can you hear me better?
Possibly, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Great. So thank you very much, James, and great to see so many people here and such a diverse range of people on the call. So my name is Joe Potter. I am policy manager at Samaritans, and I'm, in the limited time that I have, going to give you a short introduction to this handbook, Engaging Men Earlier, a guide to service design. I think it's important to say at the outset that you, in your services and in your local communities, will already be doing a lot of what this handbook advocates, but I'm hoping it will still be a useful checklist for you to and help guide your work, and maybe even bring up some kind of things that you've not thought about in the past. So a really short bit of background. The handbook is about reaching middle-aged men earlier, before they reach a crisis, and I suppose that poses the question of why Samaritans is interested in this group. We know, and as many will on this call know, that men are between 3 and 4 times more likely to take their own lives than women, that men aged 40 to 59 are the most at-risk group for suicide in the UK and Ireland, and that they have been for many years. It's these stubbornly high rates of suicide amongst this group, which is what Samaritans, through our policy work, is constantly trying to tackle, and have been for many years. So what is Samaritans' support in this area? Well, we provided emotional support nearly 500,000 times in the last 6 months to men. So it's a crucial and integral part of the support that we give. Men are talking to us at the moment about feeling lonely. They often talk to us about being isolated and ashamed, and also worried about burdening those close to them. Concerningly, at the moment during lockdown, we're hearing more and more from men talking about their worries about being able to support their family, support those around them, losing some of what they feel is their role, potentially, and also losing, crucially, their support networks. So this handbook that I want to speak to you about, Engaging Men Earlier, it actually came out of Sight, Out of Mind, which was a report which we published some time ago now. But this report, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, we interviewed men aged 40 to 59, so in that middle-age bracket, asking them, what do you want from services? What do you feel like your lives are potentially missing? What role do services play in your life, well-being services? They told us that they wanted to be offered purposeful activities and meaningful connections. Those are the 2 things that they felt were missing in their lives. They also told us that that's what led to a lot of them struggling. It was a lack of those 2 things. So that kind of that posed some interesting questions for us. I think the most interesting thing that came out of Sight, Out of Mind for Samaritans was that the well-being initiatives which were available to men when they kind of were going through hard times, those well-being initiatives were only seen as relevant once they hit rock bottom, once they hit that crisis point. They told us that support didn't arrive for them before that point, until they were a risk to themselves or to others close to them. And the fact that they didn't see well-being initiatives as being relevant to them and to their experience, that left us with a challenge. How do we appeal to and engage men earlier before they reach that lowest ebb? And that's where engaging men earlier, that's where this came from. We undertook workshops across the UK and Republic of Ireland with participants across the UK and Republic of Ireland. This time, for engaging men earlier for this handbook, we didn't speak to people at crisis point. We spoke to people earlier in that journey who might have some risk factors. So that might be a relationship recently breaking down, some job loss. These were men who were potentially at the precipice of a really difficult time, but were not yet there. And in the workshops with these men, we explored what a good life would look like and how activities and initiatives might help the men to achieve that good life. We wanted to understand what resonated with them and how these activities could fit into their lives and support their well-being. I think it's important to note that it's a relatively small sample and that these men that we spoke to were in a specific point in their lives. But we think the findings from this can be really instructive as to how we might get to those men a little earlier than we are at the moment. So what did they tell us? There were 5 key principles that the conversations and the workshops brought up. I'll run through each of these. So the first was to use activities to facilitate conversation. The second, probably obvious, to be welcoming and accessible, to communicate clearly, to foster meaningful relationships over time, and to foster a sense of achievement. These are all things that services could do to have the biggest impact with these men. So, using activities to facilitate conversation. It's really important to say at the start that the men that we spoke to thought of, the building of strong social connections, the building of friendship, having people to talk to was really, really important. They saw it as a central role that services can play to help foster those relationships. However, they were most keen on those activities that helped that fostering of relationships based on an activity. So they told us that they wanted making friends, talking about how they feel, to come about as a natural byproduct of a shared activity. So Rowan told us, he was talking with regards to a repair cafe. Maybe they can ask you to bring something broken along. There's an automatic icebreaker and avoids awkward introductions. So men like Rowan told us, I don't want to, from the very get-go, talk to strangers about my troubles. But if you give me some common task, some project to work on, that's a natural way for me to start talking. But it's important to note that there's no one size fits all when it comes to men. Some men will be totally happy to start talking straight off the bat. But for these men, before they'd hit that lowest ebb, they wanted an activity. To be welcoming and accessible. The men were they rejected anything that seemed really exclusive, financially inaccessible, that was going to be difficult, that might make it difficult for people to interact with. They told us that a sense of fun was really, really important. They didn't want to be involved in anything that took itself too seriously. They wanted, the term banter came up. A relaxed sort of fun atmosphere is a great way to make friends. Also, that they didn't want to have a massive commitment, be that time, financial at the very beginning. They wanted to start with a slow commitment and increase over time. And Dom told us, I like the photos where they're putting funny faces, they're not taking themselves too seriously. Clear communication was really essential. No one wanted to feel like the new kid in the class when they went along for the first time, not knowing what to expect, especially with some of the older men that we spoke to. They really gravitated towards services which would give a lot of information up front. Again, that feeling of not turning up, burdened with the idea of what am I, I'm new, I don't know where to park, I don't know who's going to, how the session's going to go. Lots of men told us lots of information up front helps put me at ease. Obviously, there's a balance between structure, and feeling like it's too regimented and having enough information, but not leaving participants in the dark early on. Alex told us the structure needs to be clearly communicated. It'd be good to know if there's 10 minutes at the beginning and end to chat, just really putting people at ease. Fostering relationships over time. So this comes back to that first principle. It's linked very closely to it. Strong relationships are absolutely a part of what the men we spoke to wanted. And that really speaks to what a good life looks like for the men. And lots of the men we spoke to were maybe missing some of these strong relationships. Shared interests, a shared project, a theme to bring people together. It's a great way of creating bonds. But the men were really consistent across all the groups that we spoke to. This won't happen overnight. And if it happens too quickly, it can feel false or forced. Jacob kind of sums it up. He told us, friends come as a byproduct when you do things you like. If my objective was to make friends, I could go along to something like this, in this case, a tool library, and that would work. But an acknowledgement that meaningful relationships take time, and for services to give that time and space for those to develop. Finally, foster a sense of achievement. That comes back to that principle of having something meaningful to get involved in. The people we spoke to wanted achievable, realistic goals to be stretched and have their skills stretched where possible, alongside that sort of the development of relationships. And interestingly, what came up again and again were men telling us, if you help me to develop my skills, if I can point to some progress I've made, it'll help me feel justified in getting involved. There was a feeling that without a development of skills, without something that they could point to as progress, it might feel going along for something that's just about your well-being every week. It might feel somehow indulgent, just looking after yourself. And this fostering a sense of achievement is a way that a person could point to their pet, to their partner, their friends, and say, look, this is the reason I'm doing this. This is not indulgent. Dion told us it would be nice if there was a goal you could chip away at. No pressure to achieve it in just a few sessions. So we've got these 5 principles, but we really wanted the handbook to be a tool that people could use, that people could really use as an instructive tool. And that's why we've got at the bottom of this a checklist. It's a way just to help services that are already running and doing great work, just to check against some of these principles, to check how they're doing. There's no one size fits all. There's no one way of doing this, but we hope that these sort of pointers might be instructive to the great work that's already going on in communities. I will leave it there. I will put in the chat my my Twitter handle, my email address, and also where you might be able to download the handbook from on the Samaritans website, if that's of interest.
Joe, thank you so much, and brilliant to see this. This was such sort of great timing when the report came out as part of the wider programme of work that the Samaritans are undertaking. So thank you for being part of this, and also for sort of really highlighting those principles. I love them. I think they're very simple. They are intuitive, But I think sometimes, we need to recognise that if we are sort of making these approaches to men, that actually there are core principles that work, and therefore, that's what we need to incorporate those. Just one point, and then I'll throw to the next session, just on indulgence, and maybe sort of men see mental health as a bit of a luxury. Perhaps there's something in that maybe something to think about. But thank you so much, and it's really helpful to understand a little bit more about your work, and thanks for all you're doing as an organisation in supporting all mental health for many people. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Great. So next up, and I hope you can hear me all right. I can hear a little bit of feedback, but we've got Marina O'Brien from Second Step in Bristol, who is going to talk about the service that they have over there in supporting men across Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. We're also very fortunate to have a video from a service user called Steve. And if Steve is on the call, we're very grateful that you've agreed to share your story, mate. So thank you. And that, it does touch on some challenging elements, so please just be aware of that. But Marina, over to you.
Hi, thanks, James. Can you hear me okay? Great. So yeah, hi everybody. I'm Marina. I manage the Hope Project, and the Hope Project is a male suicide prevention project. We work with men aged 30 to 64. When we launched, we were working with men 35 to 64, and we had so many inquiries about whether or not we could work with younger men that we reduced the age criteria. So we have been running since 2018. We had our money from NHS England from the suicide transformation funding, which we were very grateful for. So we were one of the Wave 1 sites, so one of the first ones to launch. And we've been, we've worked with over 400 men since we launched, which has been, both an honour and a privilege to be able to be delivering a service that clearly meets, an unmet need. And thank you for the presentation on the Samaritans report. It really does just highlight that there isn't a one size fits all, which of course, I'd be preaching to the converted to explain why that is. We experience so many of the men coming to us who really feel a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment, and the contact that we have with men that self-refer, the majority of our referrals do come via our site liaison teams and A&E, but the majority of referrals that men that self-refer, they often contact us via email, which seems to be the easiest way for them to start that communication. And we might be, having quite a few emails going kind of to and fro, and us really just encouraging for them to perhaps share their telephone number with us so we can phone up and have that conversation. And we're really conscious of not using sort of, clinical formal language like, okay, we want to book you in for an assessment. We say, look, we'd just really like to come, for you to come in and for us to have a chat with you, and just making the service really accessible. The majority of men that come to us, which is discussed in detail in the Samaritans report, they have adverse childhood experiences. They come to us having had a history of childhood sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. They've grown up with parents that are alcoholics. They've witnessed domestic violence. They've been bullied. and they've just put a lid on this, and we know that untreated trauma at some stage is going to overspill and impact on what we know to be some of those key drivers, which we know are sort of finances, debt, housing, employment, unemployment, and a breakdown of relationships, which is again a very common theme for many of the men that come to us. You know, they're not seeing their children. The court system is really difficult for men that have no money because there's no legal aid, and there are, you know, so many factors. We have been fortunate enough to be able to have some funding to deliver a counselling service, which is amazing, because the local deliverers of our IAP service, you know, the waiting list is up to a year, and for many of the men that we're working with who are in addiction or are drinking to excess or are alcoholics, they're not able to access that service. So it leaves them in this kind of, you know, middle place where they're not able to access that service. Other services that work with men that are experiencing trauma, their waiting lists are very high, and we know that when people come to us and they've asked for help, we kind of need to strike while the iron's hot. They need it then, you know, to be able to say thank you so much for coming to us and being open and being vulnerable. You know, that's really brave. And we can say we'll refer you to counselling if that's a need that they've expressed, which often it is. And then to say that the wait a year is you know, incredibly frustrating and distressing. So to have had funding to be able to deliver a really amazing service has been wonderful. One of the recipients of that service is Steve, whose story we will watch in just a moment. Many of the men that come to us have also experienced a loss by suicide, and we know that when people have experienced bereavement by suicide, that their risk of suicide increases dramatically. So we're really grateful for Steve to have shared his story, and as James acknowledged, it may be distressing and triggering for some, so do reach out to somebody if this has an impact on you. So I'll hand over to James to hit play.
I suppose the first question really is, why do you think counselling worked for you?
I think it's probably a question of timing. Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes off the back of what was an incredibly difficult experience that I found hard to make sense of, and there was still a lot of conflict going around about it. And I had 6 sessions through work in the first instance, and then I managed to get some more sessions through you. What happened in my case is that my wife got bipolar. She became very ill, became quite aggressive, and the house didn't become a safe place for me, but most importantly for my son. I sought legal advice, and they said, look, you've got to leave that house. And so, you know, I packed a couple of bags and I left with my son, and then it kind of went on to the next phase of a kind of court journey. You know, my wife got sectioned, and for me then it was too late to put things back together. You know, I kind of closed the door on her, which at the time seems a sensible course of action, and I kind of hoped that she'd find her own way back, and she'd have to do it under her own steam, and I thought she was going to, but you know, she took her own life basically, and it was only then that I started to process it, what had happened, the impact of it, you know, and it's just that kind of gut-wrenching turmoil, sadness. Yeah, so it's kind of having that time and that space with a person to kind of unpack those issues that I spoke about. And so I'd go to my counselling sessions, sometimes in tears, sometimes a bit of laughter, sometimes in anger. You know, in lots of states of mind, wanting to either talk about the good times or the bad times or the difficult times, and for somebody else to kind of bear witness to what had happened, and, you know, kind of go back into the past and kind of somebody, you know, hold your hand or put an arm on your shoulder and have, you know, let's look at this without guilt, or look at it like an adult, or, and that's what the counsellor does, and that was her saying, bear witness to it, and that's what it is. And on a kind of intellectual level, you know it's not your fault really, but you can't, on an emotional level, you can't be told, or if you do, it has to be quite often, and that's what it provided me. It was a kind of vehicle to unloading some of the burden that I felt, that, you know, and kind of bringing me into the moment, really.
How do you think? What are the things that you've noticed that have changed, do you think, as you're going through this process?
Well, I think it's gone. I suppose I'm learning to say goodbye to Gail.
Yeah, and that's hard, and something you want to do for your son as well, make it okay for him, right?
Yeah, just learning to pick up the reins in my own life, really, and you know, just try and deal with a new reality that's, you know, my life is you know, it is fundamentally pretty good, and but there is this, you know, this grief, and it's a hugely overwhelming process, and it's gone from shock, complete and utter shock, to not one of acceptance, but certainly a lot more acceptance. And having that, you know, at the end of each week, it's kind of like the end of a counselling session. It's like an end of a chapter, and so you can discuss the impact of grief during that week.
I just want to say thank you from me, and I just want to say on behalf of the people that will listen to this, a thank you to you.
Thank you very much.
Marina and Steve, thank you both for that. That was I had heard it back before, and that moment of silence and that moment of reflection just really sort of gets you, hey, and, you know, thank you for sharing that, and also for all the hard work and dedication that you're giving to your population over in you know, the West Country and Somerset, Bristol and South Gloucestershire. I mean, Marina, you know, from the work that you obviously sort of have incorporated and moved forward with the Hope Project, it is fantastic to see that, you know, that you're really getting into the sort of the crevices of what's going on in people's lives, and that you're supporting them, you know, through those moments. And, you know, you talk about therapy, you talk about peer support and case working and that sort of thing. They're really important factors. So, you know, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I think I actually know Steve. He's a friend of mine, and his partner Gail was a friend of mine too. Sorry, I really didn't think I'd do this. And I think what struck me about Steve is he didn't want to talk about it, and he didn't want to go for counselling. And you can go through that dramatic loss and you still don't want to talk about it because you feel weak. You know, that was his experience. And I you know, I phoned him a lot. And eventually he decided that he would have some counselling, you know, and it's been amazing to see how much that has helped him. I think, you know, I know James, we spoke and there's all this good stuff happening, and we spoke about what's missing and what we need to change, you know, and it's great that there are so many kind of grassroots radical organisations and things happening, you know, men getting their own stuff going, and we can't meet every need, of course we can't, you know, we try not to be prescriptive. But we also have, you know, we have targets, we have things we must do. We can't work with men for as long as we would like. We're quite rebellious. We sort of sometimes step outside of how we should be working, and I feel that's okay.
That's, yeah. I get that sort of rebellious streak, and you're right, it's what's needed, you know, and sometimes you've got to sort of stretch out there. And what we're trying to sort of show here today is that we do need that flex in the system, and what you're highlighting there is really important. Look, we're going to have to move on, Marina, I'm sorry, but, you know, thank you both to Steve and to yourself. I knew that it was a personal part for you as well, so I hope you're okay, and thanks so much for your involvement. All right.
Thanks, James.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Marina. Brilliant. Right, we're moving on. I hope Tom is going to be coming on screen. Tom Chapman, who is the founder and leading light in the Lions Barber Collective, who, if you don't know, or if you haven't heard of them, are a fantastic social movement of
This is the Vodafone voicemail service for 07.
That's Neville, and we can't get through to him at the moment, so we're trying. And Tom is, yeah, as I said, a fantastic leader and advocate for men's mental health, and also the founder of a fantastic innovative programme of work across the barbering and hair industry to provide mental health signposting, training and support to barbers, the people that we see, well, maybe not at the moment, but the people that we see regularly, and you know, have the potential to reach in and support people, you know, in their intimate moments. So, Tom, hello, mate.
Hi, James. Thank you, firstly, for setting this up and getting all this group of people together under one roof, virtual roof, and having these conversations, because I think it's really, really important, and don't underestimate the power of what you've achieved today.
Thanks, mate. Do you want to? We're hoping to have Neville along. Neville Southall, who, as people will know, is people may know, is a Premier League footballing legend. A Welsh legend, of course, superb goalkeeper in his time, and more latterly is a huge advocate for mental health, for marginalised communities, and he's been doing some work with you, Tom. I don't know if you just want to sort of tell us a little bit about how the Lions Barber Collective has started, and then sort of how the connection into Neville came about.
Yeah, okay, so the Lions Barber Lions Barber Collective started in 2014, really, when I lost a friend to suicide. I was completely unaware that he was struggling. Saw him days before. It's a similar story I'm sure a lot of people here have experienced. And I think the thing that drives me forward was at his funeral, the crematorium was so packed out that I was one of the first people to not have a seat, and I was ushered to the front and I stood next to his coffin and looked back at the room that was full, pouring out into the street. And normally you look at the back of someone's head at a funeral and you maybe interact with the people next to you, but I had hundreds of faces of loss and sadness and questions, and I think that will always stick with me, and it was a driving force of me to do this. A year later, I started the Lions Barber Collective. It was meant to be a one-off project. It was possibly that one-off project of a collection of men's haircuts photos by top barbers. It was like herding cats. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life at that point. And I really did want it to be a one-off thing. But after that, I realized very quickly that actually, as hairdressers, barbers, hair and beauty professionals, we have a license to touch. It's very intimate. We're touching people's heads, holding a cutthroat razor to someone's neck, and they're paying us to do so and enjoying it and finding it relaxing. It's a very, very privileged space in the community. Someone even said to me when I first started at Tony and Guy when I was 18 that you're going to be a therapist and a psychiatrist as well as a hairdresser, which I never even considered. And it's been joked about that we're the poor man's therapist for forever, way before I started in my career. And the fact of the matter is, people do tell us stuff when they're in the chair. People open up to us. People tell us things that perhaps we don't want to hear. And a lot of the time, things we're not prepared to hear either. We haven't been trained in this. So that was where I realized that actually, as hair professionals, we're taught about physical health and safety, lovely pictures of ringworm and head lice and psoriasis in the textbooks. As as a young man, as the glamorous side of hairdressing taken away for a split second. But I've been cutting hair 20 years and I've come across a couple of things. Head lice a few times with kids, psoriasis a few times. There's very bare minimum of that. But I'm dealing with people's mental health every day, because we all realize that mental health isn't just diagnosable terms. We all have it. We all have a brain. We all have loss. We all have situations that happen to us, let down, whatever it may be. And as hairdresser or barber, I'm there for people's first dates. I'm there for people's engagements, christenings, weddings, stag do's, the fallouts of stag do's. Also, we're there for divorces, redundancies, breakdowns, all these kinds of things, funerals. We're there for the highs and lows of everyone's life, and we are community facing. We are reaching the people that are unreachable. As we all know, 2/3 of men that take their life have never seen a doctor, never been to, we have no idea, but we see them. We see them all the time, and we reach into our clients. And a barber can see 100 people, or a hairdresser can see 100 people a week. Some of them I've spoke to have said they see 200 people a week, but they must be cutting hair pretty quickly and for long hours. I'm not jealous of that at all. But so if you're seeing 100 people a week, you're looking at over 300,000. So you talk about 100 people a week. If we could train 20 barbers a month over the course of a year, that's over 300,000 people that they're going to see, with over 1 million conversations that we're reaching out to people. And that's 20 people a month. This week, we have trained, in the last 2 days, we've trained 50 hair and beauty professionals and barber professionals. That's going to be another 6,000 conversations when they go back on the 12th of April, and they're a little bit more prepared for it. And I think, it's not only this preparing people for these conversations in the chair, but it's also about preparing them for and looking after themselves. We're telling everybody to talk all the time. It's talk about mental health. And it's great. It's the first step. It's amazing. But we need to teach people how to respond. We also need to teach people how to look after themselves as well. So we do try and tie in a little bit about in the training that we do, the barber talk and hair and beauty talk, about the 5 steps to mental well-being, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. To connect with others, be physically active, learn new skills, give to others, and be present. And we try and get them to look after themselves. And with that fact of the hair and beauty industry listening to the entire nation, at the moment, what I want to do is, there's a proposal in government at the moment for it, is if you're a therapist, counsellor, psychiatrist, even a Samaritan, you have to offload to somebody. You have to have that service. The hair and beauty industry doesn't, yet we're listening to people all day, every day. So not only do they not have the training, which is which we can help them provide, and is a great opportunity for us to look after our communities and reach the unreachable, as it were, but we also need to look after them. So I'm proposing a hairline, I suppose, of a helpline for those guys to come and offload when they need to, which I think is really important to build that resilience and a sense of emotional fitness. We all know what we need to do physically to look after ourselves, if we do it or not, but we all know what we should be doing. So I think it's really important that we need to teach people how to do that mentally also. With that, talking about me and Neville on my podcast, we're talking. I met him through Twitter, and we had a good back and forth, and he supported me. And being a young lad living in Liverpool, living in the Isle of Man, we used to come across to Liverpool, and we used to go and see Everton play. So I saw him in a goals, and then I moved down to Torquay. And when I went up to Playmore to go and watch Torquay play, he was between the sticks up there. So he sort of followed me around, or as he said on the podcast, I'm a bit of a stalker. But yeah, I had a really good contact with him, and just to see him doing what he's doing is amazing, and seeing more people using their level of influence to start these conversations around this. Suicide is a needle in a haystack situation. It can happen anywhere in the community. Like I said, 2/3 of men are not in contact with anyone when they take their life. And again, these hairdressers and barbers having these conversations forward facing into the community is fantastic. And also, the infrastructure the hair and beauty industry has is incredible. We are on every high street. I mean, everybody can access a barber or a hairdresser, whether you're in a tiny village or you're in a big city in London. It's affordable to most. And even if you're bald, you can go and have a shave, you can go and access it. And there's a non-judgmental environment where we can step in to a barber chair or hairdressers and have a conversation. Whereas if you're told you need to go and see a psychiatrist or therapy, there's instantly anxieties about, will I be diagnosed? Will I be prescribed? Will I be labelled? Will I be able to see my kids? Will I be able to do my job? All the rest of it. Whereas as a barbershop, we're trying to make those a safe space, really. And that leads on to a little bit about the shops that we're trying to open as well. Moving forward, we're going to have our first Lions Barber Collective shop in London and another one coming up in Reading, where we can completely control the space and work with the community around, and all the resources are available, bridging that gap between the communities we serve and the resources available. Sorry, James.
Tom, that's brilliant, and thank you so much. I'm going to have to be a poor substitute for Big Nev. I apologise. Yep. Obviously, Neville, as we all do. We all have our day jobs and so on. And Neville does a fantastic job of working with kids. Kids that are potentially sort of on the edge of exclusion, and works in sort of a specific school environment. So it could well be that something going on on site. So what's really brilliant, and we'll put a link up to the pod, because where Neville really sort of challenges Tom, but also sort of recognises Tom's sort of in-reach capacity and capability, is that we have, and you've absolutely nailed it there, mate, the fact that you have people on the high street that are completely unassuming. You could have a judge one minute, you could have a blooming mobster the next, like sort of just coming into your space, and you don't offer any, there's no judgment there. You're doing a very sort of universal action. And how are you finding those sort of conversations with your barbers, with your teams, that actually are enabling them? Because not only do you encourage listening skills, but you're also encouraging signposting. So how does that work? What's the feedback that you're getting from your teams?
So essentially, what we're trying to do is, the hairdressers and barbers consider themselves fixers and solvers. You come in with crap hair, they fix it, you go out looking beautiful. That's what they do. And I think when we're doing the training, what we're trying to do with them is go, look, you don't have to fix or solve when it comes to mental health. You can fix and solve and make them look beautiful on the outside, but actually we just need to step back from that. And because I think a lot of them feel like they have to fix or solve something, and actually they don't. It's about liberating them and letting them know that they just have to give that platform to listen to that person and signpost. We're not trying to make them into therapists or psychiatrists, even though I said that's, we get called that. We're not giving you, you're not diagnosing, you're not prescribing, you're just bridging that gap. So listening to them and saying, look, have you heard about some of these amazing resources that are here today, you know, and passing them on. And also, you know, we have a great follow up with them.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
No, absolutely. No, I get that. And I wonder if there's what's interesting. You and I have talked about this, Tom. I mean, we've been connected for nearly a year. I don't know if and I was thinking about, you know, we're talking about cultural experiences, and we're talking about sort of, you know, different exposures. You know, you yourself are a fantastic champion for you know, for this piece of work, for this program, but there are some areas that potentially, you know, we don't necessarily, or you don't necessarily have the voice or the, you know, the cultural experiences or the, you know, the cultural know-how in that space.
Yeah.
How are you finding that, you know, so linking into sort of, you know, Afro-Caribbean hair, or, you know, into sort of like Turkish barbering and, you know, sort of, you know, Muslim communities or what have you, you know, how are you finding that? And is there some sort of challenge today that you'd like to try to sort of, you know, push out there?
Yeah, James, there's something else I know we've discussed before. I found that the hair industry is incredibly segregated, really segregated, even between hairdressers and barbers and beauty therapists. And I'm a nail technician, I'm not a beauty therapist, and everyone's very identity. They very much have a strong identity. So the black barbershops who are leaders in the community barbershop space, I mean, we could all learn a lot from that space where men just go and hang out and talk. It is one of my missions to bring that closer together and bring the whole hair industry together and support one another. And I feel, because I think the hair industry feels like they're looked down upon slightly, because you're a hairdresser or a barber if you can't be anything else. You know, I was going to go to university. I did not. I chose to go hairdressing, and my tutors were all disappointed in me. But, you know, whatever, since then I've been able to travel the world. I got paid to go to Hawaii and cut hair. I bet none of them have been paid to Hawaii and teach. So anyway, not bitter at all, but you know, yeah, I think it's really important. We need to reach and unite the entire hair industry together, because we can essentially reach the entire nation and support our communities, and we are front facing into the community.
I love it, Tom. Listen, mate, you're doing a fantastic job, and you know, you're absolutely right. Let's try and think more about how we reach into our communities. You know, you're one of these generative thinkers. You're not sort of bound by this is my thing. You know, you're very much a sort of an infinite sort of game thinker. So, you know, you're more than willing to reach out and have these conversations within different communities, try and empower those different communities, and even, you know, like I say, take the step back and allow people to sort of, you know, take this on, you know, and try to really get to grips with that. And I think that's, you know, potentially one of the great challenges. I'm just so pleased that you don't stop working, right? You're a bloody Trojan. Whenever I don't see you stop, mate, you know, the work in London is going to be fantastic. Carnaby Street, you know, home of the swinging 60s. Reading, maybe not so much. I live there, so I can say that. But, you know, having the opportunity to test bed, you know, this approach, give people that are sort of honest, open space, anonymity, but, you know, having people that are trained and signposted, I think is really exciting. So all credit to you. Please do listen into Tom's podcast. He's a fantastic, he loves music as well. He's got some really great guests on there, you know, from football, from music, you know, other people from Twitter, you know, so please do listen into that. And, you know, much respect to you, Tom, and thank you so much for your support today.
Thanks, James.
And, you know, listen to the Neville podcast as well, and we'll make sure that Nev gets a thank you as well, because we're grateful to him for even giving us the opportunity to speak with him. Follow him on Twitter as well, because he's brilliant. Great. So look, we've had the first session. We're going to have a few minutes. Sam or Tyra, can you just prompt me how long do you think we've got, whether everyone wants to have a quick comfort break, and then we'll go in, because I realise I'm maybe a little bit behind. So should I look? Hi, Sam. You're going to come in?
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. I'm a disembodied voice at the moment. My name's Sam. I'm behind the scenes. So, yeah, I think we've got just a couple of minutes, James. Unfortunately, we've run over a little bit, but really relevant. So it would have been a shame to cut it off, I think.
Yeah, totally. All right. So, look, let's head straight in to Ian and team on community building. Should we have just a couple of minutes for a bit of comfort break? Is that OK? And then, Ian, I'll throw to you. Is that all right?
Yeah, for literally 2 minutes.
Okay, Sam, literally 2 minutes.
Literally
right.
2.
We'll be back at 10:56. I'm on mute. That's not a great start. You just went into a massive bit there. Listen, thank you so much to everyone for sticking with us. We've still got really great numbers, and I can't thank you enough for engaging. It's been a great hour or so. We're going to go into some quick fire points now. Ian and the community building guys are going to go through a session, and then we'll try and push through. So welcome everybody. Sam, I'm sure, is back. So off you go, Ian.
Thanks, Jim. Fantastic morning up to now, gentlemen and audience. I'm a northerner. I speak quite quickly anyway. I guess I'm going to have to learn to speak a little bit quicker during this presentation. I'm from a community-based collective called Movement, which is a suicide prevention movement. But I will tell you a bit more about me shortly, because I'm going to hand you straight to Nicola from the Delicate Mind, and he's going to tell you a lot of things about community engagement that I marvel at every day. Cheers, Nicola.
Respect, man. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, it's been really awesome to hear from everybody's stories. So respect and more power and more life to all of you. So I've got 3 minutes to compartmentalize my 28 years of existence. So if I miss anything, I'm sure people will be a bit more forgiving. So I'm Nicola. I'm 28 years old. I am someone who lives with depression. And I began the Delicate Mind a few years ago due to the death of my brother by suicide. We set up the Delicate Mind just as a very small idea, with my best friend coming to visit me in my bedroom and saying, Nick, I've got this idea that we should work with racialized communities. We actually don't use the term BAME because we believe it's an Orientalist term, but that's something we can get into after this as well. So he came to me and he said, Nick, let's do this thing. And there and then we wrote this application out, and thank God it's taken me to some wonderful places and wonderful spaces. So I'm going to have to share a few achievements and some of my takeaways, and I'm going to compartmentalize them all with you now. My first achievement for me is working away from authority. So I recognize that when you become part, and I'm sure everybody does here, when you become part of an institution, no matter what it is, whether it's a sports collective, whether that's a public health body, whether that's a supermarket, you become part of an institution, you become institutionalized, and that's okay. It's something which is good and bad, carries different challenges with it. So being able to work away from authority has meant I've been able to bring my most authentic self to my work and to what I do. And as a consequence of that, I've been able to get access to communities places and spaces such as prisons, youth groups, research bodies, public health bodies, and been accessing to the individuals who I've really wanted to help and really wanted to serve. So getting access to these communities and working with them has, for me, been a really significant personal achievement. The second thing for myself is, guys have touched upon finance and debt and the effect that obviously has on people's mental health. So very recently, we were funded to develop a small project around universal basic income and mental health and as a basis of economic, social and mental health justice. And that's very important, because even though these services, which are awesome, that everybody is doing here and are needed, you have to consider what are the structural inequalities that exist in society that help perpetuate mental health as a consequence as well. It doesn't just happen. Everybody here knows that you have mental health due to a multitude of reasons, but structural inequality is one of the biggest factors. Unfortunately, let's consider COVID. How many people have died as a consequence of suicide because they're so afraid that they cannot pay their bills? So that's a grotesque injustice, and being able to be entrusted to be in a position to do something about that means a lot to me. And a nicer one for you guys to share is I actually befriended one of my personal guitar heroes, Aziz Ibrahim, so I like my music too. So he's someone who's played with the Stone Roses, Cat Stevens, you name him, and now he's someone I used to Google in my bedroom, and now he's my friend. If I call him, I can be like, oh, how you doing, man? So I've told my chubby teenage stoner self, this is what's going to happen to you, my mind would be blown. So that's a personal thing that I wanted to share with you. So 2 takeaways to consider for you guys is consider your institution. Consider how sometimes being in an institution gives you different blind spots. So try to be aware of bringing your most authentic self to what you're trying to do. And it is difficult. I understand different people have stakeholders and different bodies to work with as well. But always try and consider how am I being institutionalized and what am I missing as a consequence of it. My final takeaway is stop saying communities are hard to reach. It really pisses me off because you just have to go and develop the trust with those people, go to the trusted individuals, and you develop that relationship. That's how it happens. So just assuming it's going to happen to you and people are hard to reach is ridiculous. It's not the case. All of you are smarter than that. All of you are stronger than that. So go get it and go do it. And that's it. That's me in 3 minutes, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me. I'm going to put my stuff into the chat and obviously we can share more and learn more and engage more. All power to you. Take it easy, guys.
Nick, I wonder why I love you so much, but the idea of getting up and getting into those communities is so important, you know. Absolutely love it. Can't wait to do more work with you. Going to go straight to Mike from Talk About It, Mate, and listen to his experience of engaging communities, which is vast as well.
Thanks, Ian. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good. Right. Yeah, you think Ian talks fast? Here we go. Right. 3 minutes. The basis of Talk About It, Mate, is courage, compassion and connection. Those are the 3 things that I've used and I feel we need to build a community. The ethos of that is very person-centered and we want to give people the time and space to build their true authentic self. Already been said, what a team we are. To do this, we ensure that the groups are safe. Safe spaces are paramount. They are run by trained facilitators, many of whom have lived experiences which they draw upon to make them fantastic and amazing people. And damn right I'm passionate about this because this is my life. So we have a group agreement that everyone knows what it stands. You're going into a non-judgmental space because it's laid out at the beginning. Okay, so it's really, really important. These are people who are at the early intervention stages where they're building self-awareness. So hopefully they don't get to the point where we're having to pull them out of the river. We're getting to them at the early stages and are not hard to reach because we'll work harder to reach them. So we use set topics, resilience, hope, shame. Let's get to the point. What do you want to talk about here? Sometimes the group pick the topics themselves. We structure the discussions and we use peer support in a very simple set format. That is check-in, discussion, check-out. We've grown up rapidly and considerably over the past year and we supplement all of our groups now. So we've got a massively active WhatsApp group. So our members can now attend book groups, podcast groups where we talk about TED Talks. We've got a walking group. We have additional training, subgroups around specific interests. It's often events. It's there for them, and that's why it's important because they can lean on that. So when it comes to us, it's all about doing the work. Okay, I know myself with mental health, it's never a done deal. Okay, that's why we call it mental fitness. Just like you go to the gym for your physical fitness, I've had to work at that all my life, and I will continue working at that until the day I die. Now I don't have to do it on my own. That's unrealistic, and neither do any of you fantastic people. Okay, so that gives me hope and it gives the community hope. Okay, the community has the power to pick you up if you're not feeling yourself because you feel comfortable enough to reach out to them when you're struggling. We don't have to struggle alone. That's when we're at a crisis point. Okay, seen, heard, valued, understood. That makes me feel alive. I don't know about you. Okay, we've got about 100 people who interact regularly and haven't even met. So that community can be anywhere, can't it, really? And then it's taking it through. We make it very clear of what we are and what we're not, okay? When I'm training to be a counsellor, but we're not currently a counselling service. But one day I want to be training male counsellors. because it should be somebody like me, it should be somebody like Ian, it should be somebody like Nicola, because we're role models, and it's really important to say we can be role models because we're open, and we're engaged, and we're accessible. Okay, our biggest success, the community itself, it's thriving, over 200 events last year. Like, again, often, bam, bam, bam. My biggest success is that I was able to train 22 people to help us run the groups, some of whom have gone off and set up their own communities. We can take it and we can pass it on. That's why we're doing this event, collaborative, okay? That we get one-to-ones, they get group supervision, it's safe, they get better at their job and are developing their own mental health. Nearly done. Okay, role models, you're all role models, absolutely fantastic. Right, the biggest challenge out of all of it is balance. How do you balance it? We're going to leave this COVID world to go to a post-COVID world. We're not just going to sack off all our online groups because they're literally saving people's lives. We're going to keep that going, and then we're going to set up our face-to-face communities very, very slowly. And my best advice, have the humility, have the integrity, believe in your values, purposeful actions, stick to your values, do the work, keep it simple. And over to you, Ian, because this man is integrity.
I give in. You do speak the quickest. Without any shadow of a doubt, you win. Mike, absolutely fantastic. And humility and integrity is something that's probably at the heart of what movement's trying to be about in Warrington. So thanks, Mike. Thanks, Nicola. Movement moved into a sphere in Warrington that was hard to move into because we already had some amazing mental health organisations working. We had Dr. Phil Cooper from State of Mind doing amazing stuff with Warrington Wolves and across the rugby league and in industry. Obviously with Offload as well, who I think are in the audience. Movement came about in some ways by accident, by fluke. 3 organisations, amazing organisations in their own right. Warrington Wolves, which is our rugby club, Your Livewire, which is our leisure and cultural services, and a men's group called Directions for Men, which do great work across the Northwest. Each of them separately bid for some suicide prevention money to provide suicide prevention services for guys between 30 to 55. Each of them was successful, but thankfully, Public Health said, don't work in silos. Public Health and our voluntary action service said, don't work in a silo, try and work together. So in some ways, our hands were forced, but we became bigger than the sum of our parts, which is a really important aspect of what we're trying to achieve with movement in Warrington. In some ways, movement is nobody, it's somebody, and it's everybody. It's an accessible movement, a collective of people that anyone can touch base at any stage possible. And we try and keep it, listening to some of the things from Joe at the Samaritans, we try and make those access points. Follow some of the ideas that have been around in social care for years, making sure that every contact counts, making sure there is no wrong door. So if we contact someone, so I'll give an example, one of our most successful activities at the moment is a Strava group. It's low intensity, people can get involved however they want, they can just bob in for a walk, they can write something about themselves on the group, they may be a highly paid professional, they may be someone in access of services. It's an equal playing field, but using some of the, I guess, some of the notions of counselling, some of the things Marina will be familiar with, looking at the idea of wherever we are with a movement person, we use empathy, we have no judgment, and we have unconditional positive regard for that person. So if someone touches base with us in Strava, as an example, we listen to them, we build a relationship. As Joe said, it may take some time to build that relationship, and then where we're a bit different than some of the groups, we try and signpost. You know, we have 6 men's groups in Warrington that are brilliant at what they do. We have no ownership over a collective. The collective belongs to the 220,000 people of Warrington. So if we believe it's best for them to go to Jay Deacon, who'll speak shortly, at Talk Up, then they go off to Jay Deacon. If they want to go to Directions, they go to Directions. And it's about that whole building of community. You know, my biggest thing is that 220,000 people, sadly guys, I'm not interested in the rest of the country. We're busy enough in Warrington in many ways, We need to connect with 220,000 people in some way, shape or form, that they know when a guy is struggling, they can be listened to and they can be moved to where they want to be moved to, you know, and then we make families stronger if we prevent suicide. And sadly, we have a sizable number of deaths each year by suicide in Warrington, both male and female. We're about preventing that. If we prevent one male suicide, then we're keeping families together, we're building stronger communities, we're keeping people in workplaces, that whole thing around, everything is working around the community. So Strava, I think there's been a plug for it in the chat room at some point. Love you to join it. Jim's an active member. I think Jim has actually lost a bit of weight as well while he's been in Strava with us. Second success, and I'll finish on a success and a takeaway. Success was probably, or is going to be, our 2021 Darkness into Light walk in September for World Suicide Prevention Day. And I know it's going to be a success despite COVID because of what we achieved in September just gone. In September just gone, we had no hierarchy of attendees on our walk that took us along the banks of the Mersey, took us along a canal in the middle of the night. We had chief executives of major health trusts. We had executives from the Rugby League Club. We had people in accessing the services. And as we walked along the banks of the river in the middle of the night, people cried. People found moments of commemoration, of remembrance. There was respectful moments. But I think, again, going back to Joe's report, there was laughter. Suicide prevention in its best way is not about somber, dark moments. There's enough of them when someone dies. There's enough of them in that period of bereavement afterwards. We're about trying to build a collective that is engaging, that people want to be part of, and it doesn't matter what your t-shirt is or what your hat is. I'm happy to wear Phil's State of Mind hat and stick it all over Twitter and Facebook. I'm happy to wear a Papyrus t-shirt today, but I'm part of a collective in Warrington that is moving people forwards and away from suicide prevention. I've got the thumb from Jim, and my takeaway is we've got to look in the rearview mirror. The groups who are here, we've got to look in the rearview mirror to celebrate our achievements, but also to see what our near misses have been. Where's that touch point? Where's that one contact we've had with a guy that we've not optimized, where we've lost them again, and we've lost them to some of the vices that they're involved in. We've lost them potentially to suicide, crime, you know. So we look in the rearview mirror to see where we can get better going forward. Guys, Mike, Nicola, love yous both. That's community engagement in a nutshell, Jim.
Well, you nailed it, lads. You nailed it. I don't think I've ever heard sort of fast-talking Northerners, you know, in my time as that. I mean, Mike was off the scale speed. Nicola, thank you so much, mate. You know, you're doing so much not only for your community, but raising the issues and being part of that, and being, you know, developing trust, working away, and you know, it's honestly, you guys do such great work right across the board. And Ian, without you, you're right, I might have shifted a few pounds, although probably put them on again. Anyway, won't go into that. Your support is brilliant. And Ian, I would also say the success factor for you with that movement group is how much I see you doing your activity now. I see you riding everywhere, walking everywhere. It's brilliant. So if you want to get on the movement group, support Warrington, support suicide prevention. And thank you so much, guys, for talking so eloquently and eruditely as always. Right. Cheers, lads, we're going on to social media. You won't be surprised, this is a little bit ironic in that we're going analog, in that we're getting Rory and Nick on the phone. So if you can press star and 6, if you're up. And Rory, do you want to say hello?
Hey up everyone from Nottingham, how you doing?
Good lad. And,
hi James.
And also Nick's here as well. Brilliant. Tom isn't on, so what I'll do is I'll put up some slides just to show your work, guys. Go for it, you know, talk as if you're on the pod, and yeah, and then just be aware that we've got a little bit of time constraint as well. All right, so we'll leave you to it on social media and other things, no doubt.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, thanks guys. It's Rory here from a men's mental health group called Enlighten the Shadows. It's been started up since lockdown 1. Very quickly, I lost my baby. 3 days later, my stepsister threw suicide and went to start a job. So I just thought, okay, if I'm struggling and I'm not big guy, I've got to do something about it. So in the area of social media, what I would say Enlightened specialty is, and I would say specialty with careful selective words, specialty as in our niche, not as in we are the experts. We provide an easy, non-judgmental, chilled platform on YouTube where I host a plethora of guests to simply equip and transform their lives from behind the screen. Little did I know that that would then grow more to then the more community projects, as the amazing gents that I've had the honour of meeting through James have done a great job today. So well done, fellas. So in terms of YouTube, before I pass on to Nick and what he does on other platforms, I just want to encourage people, if you know, YouTube is a massive, massive place. Like, you know, if you go out into your town, there's probably a few thousand people, but when it comes to YouTube, there's 2.3 billion users. 2.3 billion users. So there is plenty of space for you and you guys with your niche to operate, to connect and reach people with your story. Because I believe everyone on this call today has a beautiful story, has a part to play, and the world's waiting for you. So I just want to encourage you. And if you feel led, even right now, you're feeling prompted, I haven't got the tools. This is what I love about mental health. We champion one another and we signpost. So I'm going to signpost you to something. Get your pen or your keyboard ready. It's called Think Media. Think Media. So they specialize in a 7-day YouTube challenge. I did that myself in lockdown 1 and it blessed me astronomically. So Sean Cannell, check them out. But yeah, guys, before I pass to Nick, lastly, I just want to say, stay in your lane. Like, we're all finding out what we can really spearhead in to make this world a better place and support men well. What I am just so blown away by this call today is the beautiful uniqueness of all of us to reach people and make this world a better place. So just keep going, keep growing, and just let's outdo one another with love and get to the blokes that need to be reached within our favour. So yeah, I want to just go to Nick now. Nick, I've had the honour of having Nick on my show actually, so check that one out. I believe it's episode 23. Nick, mate, I just want to ask you a simple question for the people on the call today, because you are about as niche and streamlined and staying in your lane as you can get. You've used your story, you've used your suffering like Viktor Frankl, you've found that meaning in your suffering and you're just unleashing it to the world. So all I'm going to ask you, brother, is how did Gambling Guard start? What is Gambling Guard, so people can have a feel of it, bro?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Rory, mate. I'm going to try and get through this quickly, but I'm from Cornwall, so I'm from the West Country, so I wish I could speak as fast as Mike, but it's a little bit slower down here, so I'll try and get through it. But yeah, I'm Gambling Guard across Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I'm a recovered gambling addict from a 12-year addiction, over £500,000, loss of relationships. And I aim to raise awareness of gambling addiction and really to focus on destigmatizing it through, like Ian said, really through laughter, you know, to use the accessible use of humour, of entertainment, mainly through short TikTok style videos. Gambling is the addiction with the highest level of suicide, and it's often called the invisible addiction. You know, it's far easier to conceal than a substance addiction. And because of that, it increases and reinforces the shame, which I felt too. You know, I hadn't told anyone of my addiction, so why would I tell them of my recovery, right? It just wasn't a thought process. So I set up Gambling Guard initially on Twitter, and it was really as a recovery journal, just for myself, you know, like a modern day diary almost. Just tweeting my own thoughts, you know, no more than that. But 8 months into recovery, I put out a tweet I believe James is sharing on the screen on the left, which was just another tweet to my mind. But for whatever reason, it resonated with people, and it went viral. And it was viewed over 3.5 million times. From that, then, I had hundreds of people reach out saying they were struggling, didn't know where to turn to. And from that, you know, without getting too spiritual, I suddenly felt a real sense of mission. And I wanted to address what so many had been saying to me, because it's what I felt as well. You know, it was a shame, it was embarrassment. They felt that they were addicted to gambling. And I was the same, you know, up until that point, Gambling Guide was just a pseudonym. There were no photos, there was nothing to identify me. So I wanted to be an example of not being ashamed and to confront it, even whilst in recovery. And to reduce the stigma of addiction, I had the idea of using TikTok, you know, using it in a light-hearted way, whilst removing my own anonymity to try and encourage more people to come forward. TikTok, you know, it's exploded in popularity. It's been the most downloaded app on the Apple Store for 5 quarters in a row. I think it's got over 700 million users, and it's growing all the time. And I've had, you know, I've had great feedback. You know, I'm building a decent following across the social media, and I've had 750,000 views of my videos, and that's across TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And the reaction I've built tells me that we've almost been failing the next generation of disorder gamblers, or the current ones too. So I guess I've almost been a bit of a disruptor. You know, I want to challenge the model of, oh, okay, you're an addict. Well, here's Gamblers Anonymous, do the 12-step program. Look, Gamblers Anonymous, they've helped far more people than I have, so I'm not criticizing them in any way. However, the inherent secrecy, the lack of promotion, for me, does leave it at odds with the world in 2021. People want to share. So going into a secret club where you can't do that, it just isn't a way that young people want to seek help. So I'm recovering loudly to stop others dying quietly. And I'm completely comfortable and at peace with anyone who thinks I'm self-promoting because they're right. I am self-promoting. I want as many people as possible to see my videos. I know from first-hand testimony how much they're helping. 75% of my followers are male. It's the addiction with the highest level of suicide. If I can help save one life for reaching more people, then I'm doing my job. I understand how social media works, and the more eyeballs I can get on my videos, the more people I can help. And just to prove really that social media can be used for social good, which I believe it can.
Amazing, mate. Class, Nick. That's brilliant. And James, if I may, I want you to rest a little bit because you're smashing this today. I'm going to step up to the plate, and I'm going to big up one of the brothers, Tom Home. He's in the Nottingham area like myself, lives just outside Nottingham, and he's a phenomenal guy, guys. Tom Home is a really, really gifted young man. I say young man because he's younger than me. He looks about the same age, like, but he's got a fantastic website. He set up Blokes as a result of his own mental health journey. I won't disclose too much because it's more from his terms, but yeah, it's going through particularly university life and a rugby lad. You know, there's a lot of masculinity going on, a lot of testosterone in uni life and in rugby, and I just think Tom's done an amazing job to get this far, and he's a little bit like myself. He set up at the exact same time, and he's making moves, guys. Like, he's created a support mechanism on his website where you can sign up to a forum, and it's just all about having a non-judgmental space where blokes can open up, they can connect to each other. And he's got this vibe like with a hashtag called Male Tale, which is about having your own story and open up about your own experiences. Yeah, and what Tom's very good at too, guys, is he's created this process of ambassadors to like companies do. It's like, well, why can't people with mental health do it? So he's got a lot of sports people, particularly rugby players, who represent blokes, who carry it on their social media, who literally in the name of men's mental health are just shouting out about it because they've, as Nick said, they unashamedly have a following and they're speaking about the message. And the more the message goes out there, guys, don't be ashamed to share your message. Don't be falsely humble, where we kind of just go, oh well, I don't want to look like I'm making it about myself. It's not. It's about the mission. Everyone on this call, I believe, has the right intentions. And so, yeah, Blokes is phenomenal. His social media is his Instagram page is really clean and crisp. So if you check out Blokes on Instagram, you can see he's got a really lovely flow and a structure to his pictures. Canva is an amazing app that I can recommend. You have to pay, but it's really good to structure your pictures really nicely, put on it what you want. But I know Tom does a phenomenal job of that. And just lastly, he's smashing it. He's managed this week to get hold of ITV. So spoiler alert, I don't know what's going to happen, but he's just knocking on doors, guys. And that's a bit similar to myself and Nick. It's just pushing the barriers and being unashamed and, you know, network as best you can. So I hope I've pitched his group as best
you've done a great Rory, you've done a brilliant job, and as always, you know, I'm so proud to be connected and friends with you and Nick and Tom. You know, the way that you've just given us an insight into the world of social media there, you know, the fact that we can all be impacting in spaces and we don't feel as though we're in competition with each other, that actually collaboration and, you know, reaching out and getting a message heard is absolutely crucial. Even I didn't know Nick's level of engagement into his world. And you're absolutely right. You know, we have general conversations, Rory, Nick, Tom, you know, myself, we all talk about sort of that feeling of being a bit of an imposter and are we self-promoting and all of that. But, you know, Nick's firmly puts that in its place to say, yeah, well, if I'm saving someone's, you know, if I'm saving or helping someone, not saving, sorry, should think about our terminology, but if I'm helping someone, you know, that's the payoff, right? Lads, you're brilliant. Your energy is, as always, appreciated, fellas. You know, please stick around on the other call if you want. You put in any other links and so on. Nick, I didn't put your TikTok on because I don't know what TikTok is. One middle-aged bloke doesn't know what TikTok is. Shock horror.
Tell him, Nick. Tell him.
Yeah. Look,
So,
I'm old for TikTok, so.
Yeah. We'll put it up on the screen and then we'll know what's going on. But as always, thanks, fellas. We're going to move on.
Thanks, guys.
No, cheers, James. Bye.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Lee, if you can unmute *6 and hopefully you're available. Lee.
Hello,
yes.
hello, James. Can you hear me?
He's here. Right. We're moving on to vulnerabilities and debt now. I'm grateful to the colleagues that are going to be talking in this session. Lee is a fantastic generative thinker, as well as running his own business organisation for social good. He'll talk about that, I'm sure, but we're also glad to welcome, as has already been mentioned by Nicola earlier, vulnerabilities, financial, you know, debt, etc., and the challenges to mental health. So, Lee, over to you, mate.
Thank you so much, James. And I just want to say, what an event you're putting on here. I mean, I'm just so inspired by everyone that I've been listening to. So, if you're on the call, or I think if you're speaking at this event, it just shows you where we're going with all this stuff. It's incredible. My name's Lee Healy, and I'm the founder of Income Max. We're a social enterprise that helps families to maximise their income. Oh my goodness, I've been doing this a long time, 26 years, and I spend a lot of time, and my team does, navigating people through the welfare system and obviously to try and get the debt advice they need. I'm going to tell you a quick story. If you go to our website, there's a video, it's 5 minutes long, and John came to us. He had a mental health issue. He was really, really stressed. He'd reached pension age, didn't know what to do about his money. He'd got a £500 debt with a building society for the first time in his life. He was so stressed, I can't tell you. And if you watch this video on the Income Max website, you'll see that we made him, with him, made a phone call to the Department of Work and Pensions, and we got his state pension backdated, £3,000 straight in his account. And he cries, and I'll be honest with you, I must have watched that video 500 times, showing it to different partners, and it still makes me cry now, because the power of a phone call with Paula, who is our operations manager, but also deputises as my mum as well, because we're a bit of a family business. We got this customer in the end, I think something like £8,000 worth of extra income, and it was simply by just making phone calls and being there for someone. And I hope what that does is kind of tee up my colleagues alongside me, Dominic and Dr. Thomas as well, to talk about this kind of really sticky, tricky subject, which is finance and debt. Because we all know that finance and money and income is something that none of us can really live without. Whether it's, you know, having enough income to live on, being able to pay your bills, deal with your tax and your business costs, claim the benefits you need, boring sensibly, budgeting, money management, etc., etc. So we've got this really, really tricky, sticky subject. And I guess my sort of thing really to say is that help is out there for people experiencing money stress. I think Dr. Thomas is going to talk more about the kind of mental and money health stats, but I'll just kind of tee that up by saying Martin Lewis's Money and Mental Health Policy Institute know that half of people in debt have a mental health problem. So, you know, it's linked. And 86% of people say that obviously their finances are made worse, you know, when they have a mental health issue. So it's just a bit of a nightmare situation, I think, for people out there. I think for me, one of the things to kind of say is that vulnerability awareness is absolutely it's huge now within the money and debt advice sector. I think being involved in this world for over 26 years, I've seen a real step change towards people having to be treated better when it comes to vulnerability, and of course, which money and mental health is certainly part of that. So you've got things like the money and mental health form that you can complete with your GP. You've got creditor conduct having to be much, much fairer and better. So if you have a mental health issue, you know, you have to be looked after, you have to be supported. And you've got energy, water, card companies, banks, etc., having to do everything that they can to support people if you're experiencing a mental health issue, and that could be related to money, or it could be that, you know, just money is obviously part of that overall journey of mental health that you're experiencing. So I think I'll finish here by just saying that help is absolutely out there, and I popped a slide through. James, I don't know if you can, if you guys got that.
Yeah,
that
it's up on the
slide.
screen, Lee. It's up on the screen.
Fantastic, thank you, mate. Because I think one of the things that I wanted to say, and hopefully my colleagues will sort of like put this across as well, is that like there is a tremendous amount of help out there for people. Accessing it isn't always easy. So, and actually dealing with this stuff isn't easy either. It's why sometimes you need someone by your side, like that story I told you at the start, where just having someone with you to make a phone call or start to deal with this stuff can be really helpful. And this slide that you've got here, you've got a depth and breadth of organisations either working in the direct advice space or in the kind of policy space to try and break down some of these structural inequalities, which we talked about earlier. Money and mental health, often the link is to do with the structure of it all and the way people are treated and stuff like that. So from Citizens Advice, Step Change, Income Max, Turn to Us, Gingerbread, Mind Carers, Shelter, Royal British Legion, Christians Against Poverty, National Debtline. There are absolutely organisations out there that can pick up these cases with people and provide a little bit of support. And then on top of that, you've got organisations like the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute, who are kind of, you know, they're spreading the message here that money and mental health is a cycle. You know, mental health makes money worse, and money makes mental health worse. You know. So again, I'll let my colleagues jump into that. But I think that the key message for me, I think, is that help is out there. And we just want to encourage as many people as we can who are experiencing stress with money to go out and get the support that they need. So I'll chuck over to Dominic, James, if that's okay.
Perfect. Dom, come online. We've got you on screen, so we'll do that. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, just following on from that, just a little brief description about what we do. So I'm a founder of a company called Taojo. What Taojo is effectively is it's a wellbeing assessment for residents. So we assess 63 indicators of vulnerabilities, and we do that. The way it works basically is we'll work with, say, a council or a housing association, and they'll have our platform. And into that, they'll put customers on early signs of crisis. So it could be that somebody's missed a council tax payment or a rent payment, or they're a new tenant, or there's some kind of indication of crisis or potential crisis. And then what that does is that prompts a message from the council to say, look, we want to help you. We don't want any money. All we want to do is offer a hand of support. So we've teamed up with Taljo. There's a link. Click on the link, and if you need some help, you can fill in their wellbeing assessment. The Taljo wellbeing assessment is done on a smartphone. Takes about 7 minutes to do. And we're asking, like I said earlier, we're asking all sorts of questions. It's kind of yes, no, but we're basically assessing 63 indicators of vulnerability. And then at the end of that, we'll soft signpost them to organisations, and we find that 1 in 3 will click through to the signpost of the organisations. And we also ask for resident voice as well. So a lot of people will offer more information about their circumstances. So if somebody's income's dropped, they'll tell us why. So we can then pass that information back onto the originator. If somebody qualifies for debt advice or support, we'll try and get them into the instant debt advice via the PACE project with MAPS. So what we do at the end of the assessment is we do the soft signpost and we say, look, can we have consent, and we'll give that data back to the council or the housing association. So rather than them taking that person through to eviction or sending them to bailiffs or taking court action, they can understand why that person's getting into difficulty and then help them resolve those problems, because everyone gets into difficulty for a reason. There's always a reason. So if we can help find out what that is and support that person, it's a much better solution and builds long-term resilience, as opposed to sending a collection letter, which might just get put in a plastic bag and under the stairs. So that's kind of Taljo in a nutshell. And just bearing out what Lee was saying earlier, is what we find is the people that complete a Taljo are generally vulnerable people. About 90 to 95% are experiencing debt, and there's a lot of correlated vulnerability. So somebody experiencing debt, we also see about 40% of those people are also experiencing suicidal thoughts, and around 60% are experiencing some kind of mental health issue as well. In terms of addiction, you're looking at about 14% with an addiction to prescription drugs, and about 9% with addiction to gambling. So a lot of these are interlinked, and it's certainly interlinked with all the vulnerabilities. And, you know, as I said, for what Lee, to back up what Lee was saying earlier, it's about getting to people, it's about the intervention and the prevention, but then getting people into support as early as you can, not waiting till it's that crisis point, and that's the key for Taljo. And we've had a lot of support from Dr. Thomas Richardson, who's been invaluable to Taljo and worked with us in setting up the assessment. So I think it's probably a good opportunity to hand over to Tom.
Thanks, Tom. So I work in the NHS. I'm a clinical psychologist based in Portsmouth. So I work with adults with a range of mental health problems, and I'm also like a researcher and linked to the University of Southampton. And one of the things that I've been especially interested in over the last few years is about the relationship between mental health problems and financial difficulties, something which is really kind of on the agenda at the moment with COVID. And I'm just really glad to hear about how much it's been mentioned already in the various different campaigns today about how much money comes up and unemployment is a factor in men's mental health. So I'm really glad this is on other people's agenda. Quickly, just to give some headlines. So I did a paper a few years ago where you kind of statistically pull together all the research that's been done, and you're more than 3 times as likely to be in debt if you've got a mental health problem, or looking at it the other way, you know, those with debt are 3 times more likely to have a mental health problem. And it does kind of work both ways. There's a classic chicken and egg question, which comes first, but actually I think there's a bit of evidence that it does work both ways. I say my research kind of says that financial difficulties lead to poorer mental health over time. That's stronger, but it certainly does work both ways, where people will struggle financially, feel depressed, and then they will, and some people have picked up about this, not reach out for help, avoid opening the bills, avoid contacting their bank because it just feels too much, and it becomes a messy, vicious cycle. In terms of men specifically, I'm not aware of any research that's shown a particular impact about men, but something I've been thinking about in these conversations this morning. Again, this paper I did showed that you're nearly 8 times more likely to end your own life through suicide if you're in problem debt. And we know that, unfortunately, in the UK, most people who end their own life are men. So I wouldn't be surprised if debt has a particular impact. But the good news is that, you know, I'm interested as a psychologist in the psychology side. There are lots of things we know that turn these financial difficulties into mental health problems. So one is shame. We actually showed that the more shame you have about your financial situation, the bigger impact on your mental health. So anything we can do to counteract shame will help with that. And all of the amazing work that's going on here is part of that. For example, talking about gambling addiction, trying to just decrease shame about that. The second is hope. If people feel a little bit more hope that they might be able to get some support and improve their financial situation, that really helps reduce the impact of financial difficulties on their well-being. So like we're saying there, anything that we can do to help people reach out, know that there are services out there, because a lot of people don't know actually that you can kind of get free debt advice. That's going to really improve hope. And hearing about situations of people who are able to get out of debt. You know, I saw on social media a man who I went to school with sharing about how much debt he's in and what a weight it was to actually pay it off. And I think this is just really good for people to be open about this. And something I'm doing locally in Portsmouth is trying to get kind of public health campaigns about this. So we've done I did an article in the local news essentially saying, look, money impacts your mental health and you're not alone if you're struggling with COVID due to, you know, lost hours or being made redundant. So that's really important. And anything people can do to feel more control over it and actively cope with it. You know, that when you're depressed and when you're anxious, it's very easy to avoid. It's very hard to think straight. It's very easy to avoid coping with financial difficulties. So any little steps is my first thing in terms of trying to ring a debt advisor, trying to ring a bank can really just make that difference. And it's not, financial difficulties are complex and it's not something we're going to be able to solve really quickly, but anything you can do just to increase their hope and make people feel like they can take a little bit of action to improve their situation is really important. So I think all of the campaigns here for men's mental health and saying specifically about finances are really important, just to try to A, decrease the shame that people feel, and B, make it easier for people to kind of access help and try and start improving their situation.
Tom, thank you so much. That's very interesting just there about sort of shame and, you know, increasing hope and also the power of recovery, I think is a really good point, and it's something that I've been listening to over the past few years in these areas. So that's really helpful. Some start links there, and whilst we should be clear that you haven't necessarily researched into men and finances, there's potentially some correlation there that we need to think about, and avoidance as well. You know, that we talked about that. That's a really interesting factor. And Dom, thank you so much for building the correlations there. That is really helpful to understand that, you know, there are, when you think about vulnerabilities, we're thinking about them in the round. And when you're working with clients, you know, in a housing provider or in a local authority, you know, actually looking at the whole person is crucial. And something like Tell Joe and you know, the work that you're doing, you know, just makes the play for that really clearly. So brilliant. Thank you to both of you. Lee, you're on the phone, but we're going to have to move on. Thanks again for your input. Lee, follow Lee on Twitter. He's a brilliant iterative design thinking guy. He's not just about sort of income, he's about thriving communities and how we build for a possible future, you know, a more positive future. And he's got lots to say on that subject, brings in lots of really interesting thinkers. So do follow him on Twitter. Appreciate your time, guys, and thank you so much for being part of that. Right, let's go on to nature and connection, physical activity. Phil, Alex and Jay. Phil is one of the brains behind fantastic rugby league mental health charities called State of Mind Sport. For my money, you know, rugby league as a sport is way ahead of other sports in respect of how we talk about mental health and the power of connecting through both physical activity and emotional fitness. And we've also got Jay and Alex who will be giving us their take on how they go about using physical activity and the power of nature. Thanks, Phil. You're on mute at the minute, I can see.
Am I? Pretty sure.
No, you're not. Sorry, it looks like you are, but carry on.
Now I muted myself then. Thanks for that, James. No worries. All right, thanks everyone. Fantastic work that's been talked about already. So I just want to sort of introduce quickly what other fantastic projects are knocking about. So I work in the NHS, co-founder of State of Mind Sport, as James mentioned, use sport and sports people with lived experience to deliver mental fitness sessions, and look at the collaboration that's involved in that with a whole range of different friends. Thanks for the name check, Ian, before. And also with our partners in Rugby League Cares, with Offload, a whole range of different partners in the NHS. So for me, I think the collaboration's a crucial part of this, and it's great to be involved in such a great event. Obviously, I'm trying to be quite smart about this, and our website's behind me left shoulder. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, depends which way you're looking. For me, in terms of physical activity and nature, being outside and active is always massively important, certainly for my mental fitness in lockdown. Walking the dog, running has been crucial to maintain that. And the sessions now and the projects you're going to hear about now are informed about how they use physical activity and nature to improve men's mental fitness. So happy to hand over to Alex now. So I think you're on the phone, Alex. So looking forward to hear you telling us about Mind Over Mountains.
Hi there, yeah. Cheers. Yeah, so I guess really as an adventurer, as an endurance athlete at a fairly young age, 25, I think mental ill health has probably been my biggest mountain to climb. And in 2017, it actually struck me that it took me longer to get an appointment for my own struggles with anxiety, depression, and bulimia than it did to cycle, walk, and run over 5,000 miles around the UK. Now, the common response, is often just being handed some pills, and there is a place for that. But for me, that was only a plaster on a bigger problem. So when the demand clearly outstrips the supply, how are we going to fill the gap? And bearing in mind that this was before the pandemic, and we can only imagine that we're going to feel those waves yet for years to come. Now, for me, I think, as you said, during the last, last months especially, I think exercise and being in nature has been the best antidepressant. And I'm not saying it's a cure, but it's the most powerful tool that I think we aren't using enough of. So in 2019, I started a charity, Mind Over Mountains, which is aiming at restoring mental health outdoor experiences. And we deliver hill walking in the national parks in the UK, combining that with the holistic elements of mindfulness, inspirational speakers, coaching and counselling, just to create that safe space for people to walk and talk, build their resilience and build the self-help skills in their everyday lives. And what we found is that there's something quite transformational about being in nature that makes it easier to talk about these things, especially in men, than perhaps being face-to-face in a boardroom or that awkward eye contact on a Zoom call. And going uphill, maybe a bit out of breath, we're actually showing each other that it's okay to struggle, that we all struggle sometimes. And we find that we go up the hill as strangers and you come back down as friends. But I think as well, it's those days when it's chucking down with rain, you can't hear over the wind, you're having hot chocolate and you can't see NAFL on the top. That's when real connection is made. And after the last few months and year, we can't afford to lose that. Now, we also have bursaries, for those in financial hardship, anybody in difficult circumstances, and the frontline emergency workers and blue light card holders, so that anybody can access our programs, because we think everybody should have access to these tools and experiences. Now, I could be preaching here to the converted. I'm sure we all understand the importance of sport, especially in projects like yours, Phil. And I actually heard recently that 50% of us access green spaces during lockdown as a way of, to actually cope with our mental health. And 1 in 10 people started running during lockdown to, protect their mental health during the pandemic. So the big challenge now is, how do we keep these positive habits going? Well, we know that the hardest part is always taking that first step. That's our biggest barrier. And as a charity, our biggest challenge now is trying to reach those people who need us after the 6 months of lockdown and isolation. So maybe you have the same challenge. And hopefully after this today, you might actually join us on this journey and and to help us move minds over, over those mountains as a team. Because I think that's what this is all about. It's bringing people together on that shared mission. And we're excited after 6 months of lockdown that we can start our walks again next month in the Peak District. Then we're heading further south to the New Forest, to the Cotswolds in the summer, even though there aren't any proper mountains down there. And I think really great to get people back together again. So we really hope that you might help us and join us on this journey. And if you'd like, if you'd like to obviously find out more, to to walk with us and collaborate, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to support your people as well. And I think finally, James, your inspiration and enthusiasm and commitment for this and making these things happen is incredibly inspiring. So thank you for all that you've done in bringing this together.
Thanks, Alex. Phil, do you want to come back on that? That's very nice to say. Sorry.
Yeah, brilliant stuff there, Alex. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I'm sure loads of people will be interested in that, and you've done some amazing work there. For me, I think now, I told Alex about the odd mountain I climbed myself, but under duress first time. Anyway, that's another thing. So what I'd like to do now is a great man from the joyous place of Warrington, and I'm really pleased, James, that one of your comments and quotes was, please support Warrington, as a Warrington Wolves fan myself. But I just wanted to introduce Jay Deakin about Talk Hub. Tell us about what you're up to, Jay.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jay, and I'm the founder of Talk Hub CIC in Warrington. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. I'm a massive Evertonian and ex-amateur boxer. So this just kind of drove me on to set up the men's walk and talk last year, speaking out about my story online, and I was getting a lot of people coming up to me and stuff at the Everton matches and online, and I thought, there's got to be a way to connect with guys. And whilst I was out walking, recovering from a nose operation, I just thought, we don't need a room or anything to get guys together. Like, we can just do walking. It's free, and it's a relaxed atmosphere, like Alex said, getting out in nature and stuff. It's just it takes the pressure off. So we did a couple of walks before COVID, and then for a month or so I wasn't sure what to do, and then I come up with an idea of the virtual men's walk, where I've got guys to go out for a walk at 10 o'clock on a Saturday, no matter where you are in the country or the world, and then we was meeting up on Zoom afterwards at 11, and the guys would send me a photo, and I'd put it into a photo collage, and we was getting guys from England, Scotland. I've got some mates in USA, Uruguay, people sending photos in, and it was just amazing to see all these people coming together. And we got Chris Kirkland to come on and have a chat with the lads, and we're just getting guys from all over just joining in. And there's no pressure to show your face or speak. You can just listen in on our Zoom calls. And yeah, after that, we got back on the socially distanced walks and going to all different places locally. Obviously, I work in Warrington, but also got a big connection in Liverpool, Merseyside, because obviously I follow the football, and I think football is a really great thing to get guys together. I'm not doing anything amazing, just simple stuff, connecting with guys, and I try, Joe said before from the Samaritans, about I'm trying to engage guys who are, say, at the top of the mountain, who are feeling okay, but they might have a wobble for a few weeks because of relationships or work, and they can join us for a few weeks, and that'll stop them from falling down that mountain. And yeah, just the walks are just brilliant. And also we play football. I enjoy football as well on a Friday, and we played in tournaments, which is just amazing to see the guys get together from all different kind of cultures and backgrounds. It doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what football team you support. We all just come together, and yeah, it's just been amazing. I feel like I've got quite a good connection with the younger generation as well. 20, 30-year-olds feel like they can look up to me, because obviously I'm just a normal lad. I love football, I love boxing, music and stuff like that. So yeah, I just feel like, you know, hopefully in 20 years time, my generation, when we get to 50, 60, you know, we will be speaking about these things openly. Whereas I know from like my job now and the older bosses and stuff, they're not really receptive to like talking about stuff. You know, they just brush it off, and if I have a problem, it's hard to talk about. So hopefully when I'm older and our generation, our things will be much better. So yeah, that's what we are. We're just a walk and talk, and you know, my aim is just to help connect as many guys as possible by working with all these other amazing people on this group. I'd just like to say thank you to James for setting this up as well. It's been really insightful. Thank you.
Okay, cheers for that, Jay. Fantastic. Sorry to step in there, James. I think certainly to echo all those great sort of praise for you, James, I think at this point, as well as getting everyone together. So I'll just start to throw that in. Great for me. I'm going to give you a nice link now, James. So obviously as a parent myself, and Jay mentioning music and football, it's a great segue to the genius Will Nicholson, who's awaiting excitedly to entertain you further.
Hi Phil, that's a big introduction. I'm not sure I can live up to that, but I mean really. So my name's Will Nicholson, as Phil was saying there. I'm hugely passionate about networks, collaboration, community, everything that Jay was saying there. How you bring people together from all different backgrounds, celebrate the wonderful diversity, just like today. What an amazing group of people. Yeah, there's an awful lot of challenges out there, but actually when you see the wealth of experience, the energy, I'm just picking up some of the words today. Rory was talking about love. It's something that's really hard as men to say out loud. I still find that challenging, but the love in this room, the kindness, the care, that we're somebody, we're nobody, we're everybody, the chance to stay in our lanes, but also to be part of a motorway if we're going to be part of that as well, you know. And the thing that I love doing is just supporting people to come together, and it's been amazing working with James and a lot of the guys on this call, just finding ways to celebrate and support us individually in the work that we're doing, but also to find ways that we can connect, because I think not just as men but as people, you know, we're not one size fits all. We're not that simple. We have lots of different things that will engage us at different times in our lives. And I think I'm going to stop there, because I think today is really for me just everything that I care about. And we're here to talk about this last session around fatherhood. I am a dad myself, and my whole connection with men's mental health really came through my own experience of being bullied at work when I worked in the city, and I just became a new dad at the same time. I couldn't talk to anyone. It took me, I think it was 7-8 years afterwards. I didn't even tell my wife that what had happened. I found it was so challenging, not only to try and balance the experiences of being a dad through childbirth, supporting your partner, and all that brought with it, but also then to try and deal with being bullied at work, and how humiliating I found that, how difficult I found to be vulnerable. I couldn't tell my friends, my family. So I think, you know, and that's why there's two really wonderful people that are going to talk next that I really want to hand over to them, because the work that they're doing, it's great to connect with you both now, Kieran and Elliot. I wish I'd had the networks and the events like this, you know, 10 years ago when that happened, because it would have been amazing for me to find that support. So I'm going to stop now. Kieran, would you like to introduce yourself and Dad Matters? Yeah, I'd love for everyone else to hear what wonderful work that you're doing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. We're Dad Matters. We're a perinatal and parent-infant mental health support service. We're commissioned within a perinatal mental health pathway through the NHS. So we're not a third sector organisation trying to get in, which is very challenging in itself. One of the reasons that I was really keen to talk today is the kind of spirit of collaboration really fits in with the pathways that we already work in. Becoming a dad is one of the biggest transitions that you're ever going to face as a man. And we've already heard of a lot of examples where men struggle with mental health, and becoming a dad is no different. I think the way that we approach becoming a dad is different to all the other stuff, because we're trying to protect our partner and support our partner, and also help our babies to develop in a really positive way. And all of that is added pressure, but it's also ways that we can divert our attention from our own well-being. We tend to focus on other things outside of our own well-being to make sure our partners and our babies are okay. One of the reasons that we're here is because we want to support those relationships between dads and babies, because those relationships are going to help those babies to not experience the same kinds of issues that we're having as men in 2021. And so that's got to be a key part of what we do. Intervention at an early stage is massive. Also, the way that services around families engage with men is we've been trying for years, and we've always been doing the same things. Having a football session for dads is great, because some dads do like football. Having a messy play session for dads is great, because they like getting messy with the babies. But nobody's doing like speaking to dads as a dad at an antenatal clinic, or speaking to a dad within an antenatal class about their journey into becoming a dad. Nobody's offering support for those dads because they are dads. It's very much tried and tested stuff that we know will bring dads in and increases numbers, but it's not really part of a whole system. What we've done is layered what we do. So we have a universal approach with information, education, online stuff, sharing experiences. Lived experience is a massive part of it. For men to acknowledge their struggles and their challenges, they need to see that other people are going through it as well, and then they can see that within themselves. We also have one-to-one referrals that we take through the NHS for dads who are supporting partners with mental health issues, or for dads who are struggling in their own right. We take referrals from dads with all sorts of different experiences, and they get one-to-one peer support from our staff, from our volunteers. And then within the middle of that, we have these buffer zones of groups for dads who've experienced loss, groups for dads who just need some support with well-being, groups for dads whose partners are struggling with their mental health, walk and talk sessions where we're just talking to dads about being a dad and having a baby with people who understand those situations. And I think the important sort of message I think that I've got from today is we all do have a lane, but we can support everybody else's lane without actually compromising what we're doing. You know, we don't need to reach everyone. We just need to reach the people that what we're delivering is going to help, and that's a really important point. And working with all the other organisations, we signpost to everyone, and that's how we support dads, because they won't all access a football group or a rugby group or a music group or a parenting group. They'll access support in different places, so the support needs to mirror the fact that they can get support and information in lots of places.
Thanks, Kieran. I think what I really love about your work is that it has that approach that helps men connect in so many different ways, and it doesn't sort of just box it up into one or two of those things, and it almost acts as an access to all these other wonderful support that we've heard from today. I'll bring you back in a minute. I'm just going to get Elliot Ray on the call to talk about music, football, fatherhood, because I think you also hear another really great example of someone that's bringing lots of different hats together in one place. Elliot.
Hi, thanks everyone. What a great event. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. So I'm going to talk about what we do at Music, Football, Fatherhood, and really focus on collaboration as well. So we are a parenting and lifestyle platform for men, and we are all about having open conversations around fatherhood. And really we do three things. The first thing is to have those open conversations, and we do that by creating space for dads to talk about the ups and the downs of parenting. The second thing that we really champion is equal parenting. We know what the landscape has looked like over the last year, especially with COVID. So really fatherhood involvement from the beginning and equal parenting to be the norm. And the third thing is a positive representation of diverse fatherhood, whether that's gay dads, whether that's around race, class. We want positive representations of all dads to be out there in the media. And we do this work through our blog, which has resources for dads across every stage of their journey, relatable voices, articles written by other dads touching on topics around mental health, around well-being, everything to be with a dad. Community events, so we bring our community together, and that's to share, support and celebrate. We run webinars and workshops with organisations to talk to them about how they can support working dads. And we also have a book coming out called Dad, which is coming out in May. And Dad, I'm so excited about bringing this project together. It's easily, I think, the most important thing I've done, other than being a parent myself, is to do this book. And this book is a deeply moving collection of stories that really represents the diversity of modern fatherhood. I don't think we've had ever before a group of dads come together and be so honest and so vulnerable, and share their experiences. We have stories about widowhood. Alec, whose wife died 7 hours after their second child was born. We have Will talking about his experiences of being bullied at work. Andy, who had 3 miscarriages and had a mental health issues afterwards. Danny, who has an autistic son and had ups and downs in that. But they're all defiant stories. They're tough subjects, but they're defiant and inspiring stories. And I can't wait to bring it out into the world. And the way we put this book together was a real community effort. It was a real collaboration, not just with the 20 dads that are writing for the book, but we have a range of different partners on board that are helping us to bring this to life. We raised money for a crowdfunder, and the success of that, we raised £12,000 in 2.5 weeks. And the success of that was due to collaboration. It was with all our partners coming together, believing in the book and helping us to reach into new communities. So Dads Matters, Kieran is a partner, State of Mind Sport, and many others that are on this call as well. And collaboration is key. You know, as Kieran said, we don't have to try and solve the world ourselves. We can do our bit, but recognizing that we need each other to achieve our goals. We need each other to work together, to understand what we bring to the table and how we can drop the egos, how we can look at our shared objectives and build relationships to make sure we can reach into real communities and make the difference for the people that we're trying to make, which is for dads and for men to talk about mental health, to have support, and to really enjoy their life and inspire and achieve the things they want to in their life.
Thanks, Elliot. I think one thing, you know, myself being part of that dad book that's been really, and that's what's really powerful about today as well, is that by having 20 different stories, it goes to the point that I think Ian said earlier about being somebody, being nobody, but being everybody. It's not about, I found it really hard about, I didn't want to ever write a story necessarily about myself, but I feel like by being part of this collective, being with 20 other dads, it's meant that, yes, I can tell my bit, but my bit's just one bit. It's one of the lanes within everything. And it's been such an amazing journey, you know, as an example of collaboration, not just, you know, we can talk about collaborations as organizations, but actually as different dads all collaborating, where we've come from very diverse backgrounds, really different stories. We all have something different to share, but actually it's all a component of lots of different people have different issues as a dad and can connect with it in different ways. So that's one thing I really wanted to highlight about what you're doing there, Elliot, but also with the dad book, which was really interesting. And someone touched earlier about the point about non-hierarchical, is that we were under pressure for that book to get a sort of celebrity to, you know, well, this isn't really going to sell unless you have someone that's you know, a really famous dad that might bring it out. And then we suddenly realized that actually that this is about normal people, you know, everyone just being able to tell their story and actually not, you know, and you know, I'd love for Elliot, maybe you can say a bit more about it, but not succumbing to that pressure to feel that we needed to do that in order to sell this. Because I think if you go down that route, you end up inadvertently saying, well, that story is more important than someone else's story. And I think, so Elliot, I don't know if you want to say a bit really briefly on that, and then I'd like to go to Kieran on a question.
Sure, I can talk all day about this. I mean, the struggles that we had in actually sticking to the real meaning of the book, which is giving a voice to normal, ordinary people like you and I, who, and I don't mean ordinary in a derogatory term, you know, I mean hardworking, dedicated dads who make up the majority of society, giving a voice to those people to share their stories. Because for me personally, don't get me wrong, there is space for celebrities and public figures to write books about their experiences, but actually hearing from people that have had similar experiences to mine will help me so much. That is where the power is, and that is where voices are underrepresented. What we're trying to do is really mix up the publishing world, really, and saying, look, there are ordinary people have extraordinary experiences or voices, and they want to share, and that is how we are going to get through to people. That's how we're going to change lives, and that's how we're going to bring comfort to people. And so I'm so proud that, you know, these dads have been so vulnerable and are sharing with us. And I genuinely can't wait for it to be out there in the world.
Thanks, Elliot. Just really quickly to finish off, I mean, today what's been so amazing is that James has initiated this in a role in the NHS, but what we've seen is this incredible coming together of people working in the system, people working in communities, people working in all different assets, and when Tom was talking right at the beginning about the Lions Barber Initiative, we suddenly realised that we're everywhere. And we can support people in all different settings. So Kieran, you mentioned a really interesting point, because you do your work in the system. I just want to, as a sort of micro example of that, just how you've found a way to work with the NHS, with the sort of statutory support services, but also connecting outside. I don't know if you want to just finish off and say something briefly about that.
I think it's really, really important that commissioners, particularly heads of services, they look at a collaborative approach. In Greater Manchester, we have a full system perinatal mental health pathway that includes mental health services, perinatal services, midwives, health visitors, mother and baby units, peer support within the third sector, and then we fit into that peer support element of it. And our role is to connect dads into the systems that are there to support them. There's quite a lot of reaction, so people know they need to reach dads, so they work in silos to offer a peer support worker or a particular men's group for mental health sessions, but they could do it together in a collaborative way and offer a whole system from conception to whenever, and dads can be part of the journey within that system the whole way through, rather than only and I think it goes back to something we heard right at the beginning, rather than only connecting when they're in crisis, because that's been the biggest issue.
Thanks, Kieran. And I think that's a really nice handover back to James, who's going to sort of wrap up today. I think, that perfect coming together of system and commissioners and funding and all of us working together. James, over to you.
Will, thank you so much, Kieran and Elliot. I know sometimes it can feel a little bit like the graveyard shift, but you have our grateful thanks and best wishes for what you've said there. Kieran's point on the commissioning is a perfect segue. It's a perfect bookend, really, to say that we have a responsibility right across the board, and that's why we sort of placed that at the end. So we're grateful to you guys. Elliot, thank you so much for joining on the call, and to Will as well. Look, I just want to sort of try and tie off because I'm aware of the time. So I've got one more thing to share, and look at me completely mangling it just at the end. Don't they say you always leave the end to the best, like you're in some sort of play or something? I don't know. Anyway, these are the last couple of slides. Just the last slide I want to show to everyone, really. I just want to observe that the virtual nature of the past year has been challenging for everybody. We know that, but it has given us, as you've seen today, the opportunity to look out of our traditional geographical and organisational relationships. But we also recognise that we have specific expectations on how our communities need to work. I've set some thoughts from today's sessions, in a collaboration checklist, if you will, that we should all be thinking about, so thinking around concepts such as providing a safe and supportive environment for everyone, as well as recognising that we need to be open and trusting in our interactions to really sort of unlock the power and potential and scale that exists. And that happens when we embrace the power of lived experience and almost the social entrepreneur side of things. Elliot perfectly set the example there, just as we were describing. There's been so much conversation about how we support each other, think non-competitively, and actually we can rise to meet the requirements of the statutory system. That there are systems in place, there are organisations and lived experience, advocates out there. The last thing really is just to say thank you to everyone for their input, not least the speakers who have put the time and effort in and have done brilliantly with the IT, similarly to my team, Sam, Tyra and Nick, but to you guys that have been involved in the chat and been involved on the call. It's been fantastic to have so many people and that we've still got a good number at the end of the session. We will be recording this and we'll be able to leave this out there. I'll get the guys when they get the chance to respond to some of the questions if we can in the chat, because I realise that there has been quite a lot there. Any reflections or thoughts that you want to share, please do think about it, getting in contact either through myself or with any of the presenters. Sure, we'd love to hear from you in any way. And please let's just let this be, you know, a first step on a journey together. And you know, you're now free to get on with the rest of your day, perhaps some lunch. I'm sure everyone will be in that sort of similar mindset. Thanks to Joe as well. I've left up the bit on the Samaritans. It was really great to have his input from the start. Marina, Tom, and sharing about Neville, obviously. But anyway, I'll stop. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this. Absolute pleasure to work with everyone. And let's hope that this is a step in the right direction. Thanks very much.